Hi, I'm Angela Wiseman, and my Pechakucha today is about reconceptualizing family literacy. The U.S. prison population is growing exponentially, and currently 2.7 children have a parent, 2.7 million children have a parent who's behind bars. Women are being incarcerated at exponentially higher rates in addition, and because they're primary caregivers, this is a major concern. There's real trauma that can happen from the separation between children and their parents, but there's very little attention given to this in educational research. My research was initially conceptualized as a family literacy project for formerly incarcerated parents and their children. This project evolved from community partnerships where we identified this topic as an important need in our communities. Today, what I want to do is talk about how my research responds to a need to reconceptualize family literacy in both policy and research. My focus is on parents, even though it was initially a family, but because they don't have a lot of access to their children in this particular setting, it's become more of an adult literacy project. I want to explain to you a few points about family literacy. Family literacy was initially conceptualized about 30 years ago, and it's referred to the idea of discourse within the family. It's generally agreed upon that when we're talking about family literacy, we're referring to the oral and written communication of family to support language and literacy. As policy is developed around this idea, it's taken a bit of a deficit paradigm. You can see the images here. These are all from different family literacy events and days. What they do is they focus oftentimes on training models or intervention models. But recently, ethnographic research has expanded this kind of idea of what it means to be family and has even focused on things like the bidirectional relationships of siblings and how that affects children's literacy development. So some research has also expanded traditional notions of what it means to be a family, addressing the fact that other people have influences on children, including grandparents, and even caregivers that are not biologically related. So research on family literacy that examines literacy practices from parents and their children who are separated is almost non-existent. And this is really a problem, to not address the geographic realities of parents and children when there are so many reasons that they're separated, including divorce, including immigration, and the topic that I'm working with, families that have an incarcerated parent. So in my research, I'm exploring how formerly incarcerated parents read and respond to children's literature in a small group setting. We have open-ended dialogic responses, so I'm not coming in with a particular strategy or method that needs to be implemented. We're discussing literature. I want to tell you about a quote from my research, quoting a mother from my study. She said, in responding to literature, "This year I'll live with my children again, but I don't have a specific date. I want to tell them that mommy is going to be there to see them. This hurts. I'll see them Friday, and I'm going to bring the books that we've been reading." I've got some important findings from working with the mothers. Some of the findings include that they use responding to literature to consider their past experiences, think about their parental identities, and also reflect on their transition back to the public sphere and back with their children. There's a lot of things that come out when they respond to literature in a very open-ended way. What if I'm successful is one of the big questions. Moving on to the next step, while it's exciting, is very intimidating. One parent said, "It's about knowing my fears. You can't do much if you don't know anything about it." Right now, I'm currently working with a group of fathers in the same treatment residential facility, but in the men's campus. It has some similar themes that are coming up, but also has some differences in that the fathers oftentimes don't have contact with their children. But what's interesting is the fathers are also using more innovative methods of technology to stay in touch. They're Skyping, they're emailing, and things like that. I've shared a few findings with you, and I want to return to my larger purpose of reconceptualizing family literacy. Influenced by work by Paulo Freire with adult literacy programs, his work with adult literacy programs, I advocate for an approach that builds upon more generative themes from participants in a dialogic way, assessing and exploring the social, emotional, and cultural aspects of what it means to be literate, for what it means to respond to literature. I'd like to push the idea of family literacy as a form of transformational learning. With that in mind, literacy programs must be more responsive to complex and contradictory identities. As parents have been responding to literature, and I've been working with them, I've learned about many of their challenges. They are challenged with social programs that are supposed to help them with the transition back to the public sphere that are not meeting their needs. They're grieving over the loss of relationships because of drug abuse. They're dealing with all sorts of difficulties with transitioning back. So I want to attend or bring up two important points that are very significant in thinking about family literacy in situations like this. First, I'd like to acknowledge the bidirectionality of children and their parents and how supporting children can also support parents. Second, I want to argue that it's important to address these geographical locations and realities of families, expanding the notion of family literacy beyond the idea of a home. So to conclude, I want to emphasize the silent stories of children and their families when we focus on narrow definitions of family literacy. And I'd like to end with a quote from Paulo Freire, since he's been an influence in the way that I've approached this literacy project, and I think it's a very important way of thinking about working with families and their children. Freire said, "Reading is not walking on the words, but embracing them." Thank you.